Hello, hello. Can you all hear me? Yeah. How we feeling tonight? Good. Yeah. We having a good time here at PAX so far. That was enthusiastic. All right. Welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us as we dive into the world of 3D terrain gaming. I'm kind of hosting this whole thing today. My name is Freedom. I am the owner of a Crit Award-nominated terrain company called Thunder Wizard Games, and we feature all sorts of stuff. And I would like to introduce other Crit Award-nominated wonderful people who are sitting here on this panel with me. I would like to start with NPC Creations over here. He's the main man. If you haven't seen him on Instagram, he's got wonderful cinematic photography of terrain. And in the middle over here, we have Nate Taylor, the CCO of Dwarven when it comes to terrain and whatnot. And then finally, we have the man with the hands gifted by the gods, Tabletop Witchcraft, who can take your trash and make it a sky ship. We're here today just to kind of like give you guys a little insight on how to get into terrain and just like talk about things that inspire us and whatnot. This panel is gonna be pretty like laid back. We're just gonna like talk about the things that work for us, the things that don't work for us, and just everything. I'm gonna give these guys the floor.
Q&A at the end
for a second to introduce themselves.
Yeah. Q&A at the end also.
Yeah. Q&A at the end. You know, if you have any, if you have a problem that's stumping you, feel free to ask, and we'll probably be stumped too.
Yeah.
But yeah, do you guys want to start with questions, or do you want to just go ahead and jump into it? Cool, awesome. So, the first question. We all have a place where we begin, right? The starting point. For you guys, what was your starting point? What was like that?
In like gaming?
Like singularity that like.
Why did we start doing tabletop games?
Yeah. Tabletop games, terrain, like just all that stuff. Even art. You could have. If it started for you with art before it was terrain.
Yeah, my journey kind of started during COVID, honestly. It was, I had a home game going. I didn't really have any use for this terrain that was just sitting around, and so I kind of just wanted to start doing something with it. And basically that came in the form of like photography, dioramas, and just sort of a way to tell stories at a time when we really couldn't tell as many stories. And really that was really how I kind of got into social media and kind of getting out there with kind of what I was creating.
Yeah, you've done a great job too. I look at some of your stuff online, and you've done a really good. It's really interesting how you control narrative through like the lighting and the dramatic effects that you do. I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to like tell a story with an image, and I just love to hear sort of the meaning and some of the stories that people kind of have come up with about some of the pictures and things like that. So
this is actually one of yours. This town shot I really love.
That was actually the first one I ever did.
Yeah. I also this one gets me the boat and the light.
Yeah. The adventurers pulling up to a dark jungle, trying to attach their boat on rickety waters, that kind of thing.
It's a story.
Exactly. It's just, and honestly, I think it resonates with people because I've been a DM for about 8 years, and so I just have seen so many stories. I know the insane things that players do, so I just have an idea of like what I can put into dioramas and just what you can get away with. Because players will pretty much do anything, so you can get away with anything. So.
You can like try to prepare for everything, but you can't prepare for anything.
Nope. That's right.
What about you? Where did you start? And my dates could be wrong, but like 1995, Dwarven Forge started.
96. You'd get a point though if you were like it was I don't know a close to dates contest. You'd like get a point. I started 1984 Redbox D&D. Grew up in Vermont. My little brother and I there weren't a lot of kids around, and this was suddenly like, oh my god, you can do anything. Yeah. And there was a cartoon, and you were just like, it was like the coolest thing in the world. And then, might be a shocker, I was kind of like the weird kid in school. And anybody else here been a weird kid?
Related?
No?
Yeah.
it became like that was my way to make friends, right? It was something like starting DMing in 5th grade at recess was a way to cultivate a friend group that was into something other than sports ball, and it worked out really well. And then I started LARPing, and never came back. But mostly it was a way to connect with a community of like-minded people, like other people that wanted.
I feel like
tell
that's
stories.
like a huge part of it. Just finding a community where you can just tell stories together and enjoy time with each other. And I think that's why we're all here. We're all at PAX because we like to interact with people and like play games and whatnot. John.
Yeah, well,
the man with the hands.
I was afraid of dating myself, but I think you did, so I appreciate it. For me, it started way back, early 90s, right around Christmas this time a year. And who here saw the original Hero Quest commercial?
Dude.
It has the original agent, yeah. So for me, that was it. That's what got me going. And, playing that game, trying to get some friends to play it, making the little bits and pieces of terrain that God knows where they are now, making my own quests. And then, sometimes it gets hard to get the friends together and play these games, so it then led me into the Joe Deaver book series. If you guys have read that, the Lone Wolf, Choose Your Own Adventure books. Those are awesome. And, just getting into that lore as a kid and really having that, be my background led me really to where I'm at today. And then art, I love painting, sculpting, you name it, I've always done all that kind of stuff.
I just before, turn your trash into a shit, but you really do a good job of taking just raw elements and turning it into really intricate pieces of art, and that's super cool. I think it takes an eye and a hand to really do something like that.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Hey, no doubt. So you kind of
And that
touched
should
on
be
this.
that should be the first terrain tip. Anything can be terrain.
Okay.
Go to the aquarium store. Go wherever. Anything can be
Yeah.
terrain. The bottle cap.
I mean, I've got stuff orange juice container caps
Yes.
built into my airship.
Those Tropicana ones.
Yeah, those are great. Airborne. I took some before I came here, so I wasn't sick for today.
Yeah.
I used those little caps. I mean, yeah.
I have a floating rock piece that's got about $1.50 in pennies at the bottom of it, just to make sure it doesn't fall over. So anything can be turned. You kind of touched on this in what you just said. Everyone kind of has things that they draw inspiration from. What are some pieces of media that you really pull from? It could be visual or maybe even just descriptors, settings, and whatnot from books.
Yeah, I mean, like any DM, I just steal everything I can from everything I've ever watched or seen.
Plagiarism, guys.
Yeah, as is tradition. I would say I pull a lot from. When I was growing up, oh my gosh. Obviously, Lord of the Rings, Tolkien, all these things have informed so many different parts of it. But as far as the cinematic sort of experience and things like that go, I grew up watching Lord of the Rings and stuff like that,
Yeah.
so that is so fundamentally baked into my head. I think.
Oh yeah,
that would-
I think who here is a Lord of the Rings fan, the Tolkien fan? I think I see a hand. I think everyone's hand is gracious now.
And honestly, I would say also just the old school D&D art as well.
Yeah.
That is such a huge impact on kind of how I visually see things and stuff I've tried to recreate. Honestly.
This actually, you mentioned the D&D art, and this makes me think of that. This is one of yours. The lava and the vibrant reds just take me back to the old red.
Paladin and Hell kind of
Yeah.
images and things like that. This was a shot I did. This is Joe Manganiello's party, his group.
Oh my God, guys, we can do this.
Yeah.
Anyways, what about you guys? Inspiration, what are is there? And it could go beyond just media. Maybe art in other mediums
I'd say
classical
nature
art,
also
stuff like
informs
that.
a lot of it as well.
Magic cards. Take a lot of. There's so much good art generated and such cool world building, and that's cool. I'm very analog, so it's nice to be able to flip through a bunch of physical. I have art books with cool fancy art, but just a stack of cards and go through and say is there anything here? But when we're developing the stuff at Dwarven Forge, we're drawing a lot from our home games or whatever, or games that we've played, right? It's like, what are the scenes that stick with you? Like, if we're in this environment, what are the scenes that have been at the table, and someone say, oh, we did this thing where everyone's like, oh yeah, I did a thing that was also in a mine or whatever. It's like sort of drawing from what are the cool cinematic moments that we've shared at the table. So, and theoretically, that's the sort of stuff other people are going to want to share. So we're looking for, and it's not necessarily the specific terrain, but it's the experience. Like, what was like the cool,
theme or
there's
The
the
feeling
moment,
that-
the cinematic moment that people are going to want to chase.
And it can be one small thing that leads to a huge
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's a lot of it. Is like those moments you remember from your games. Like, how do we recreate that, or how do we distill that down to like a piece of terrain that can kind of help other people jumpstart and have that similar experience that could be really meaningful.
And it can be down to like the smallest little details too. So it doesn't have to be, you know, an entire set piece that you're trying to,
Yeah.
you know, like I've done a diorama of this mausoleum with this necromancer raising all the undead, and I put one little hand behind the mausoleum, just coming out of the ground. You can't even see it; it's so tiny. But when somebody takes the time to spin that around and actually look at it and find that one little piece, seeing that on their face, it's just really cool.
Yep. And that's like one of the like nice things about this medium is that due to the scale, you know, like we're dealing with things on like a 28 millimeter to 32 millimeter scale. It leaves so much room to like include so many like little details, and that even kind of like you can put something on your battle map and your players can interact with it, you know, and that's I think the thing that I try to remind my players of. I'm like, I have this 3D terrain. Anything you see, you can touch.
Well, and that's for at least when I'm playing and DMing. If I put something on the table, then it's open season. Like, it doesn't matter if it was written through whoever. If they're like, hey, there's like a mushroom sculpt on this, whatever. Can I like? Absolutely, yes. We're going down to Mushroom Town. Let's see where that goes. I don't know plan for it, but they become ideally your terrain becomes a narrative vehicle, right? The things there are giving your players. It's like improv, right? You're feeding them a thing that they can then pick up and like start running with. Like, all right, we didn't know we were going there, but let's do this.
Yeah, and honestly, the terrain is like the icing on the cake, and honestly, you still need the cake. And then, but then you need the icing to, you know, sort of just enhance and really amplify the emotions of the cake, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Like you said,
spark
to
some cake,
spark
you know, so I got
imagination, right? To spark everyone's imagination
Yeah,
at the table is really what you're trying to do.
Speaking of cake, this was nice. This looks really cool.
Is it cake or terrain?
So this I think that's a good segue into this next question. What are some of your favorite tools for creating detailed imagery with your maps? Like, what are some ways you use to like enhance and amplify like your narratives and just, you know, the whole shtick?
I would say my builds are just reiterations. I will go in, do a base build, and just try to get the idea on the table. And then I will go through and revise, and just adding little details, adding little revisions and changes in a way that you're just making it better and punching it up over time. Because I don't think anybody is going to sit down and put a masterpiece down. It takes a little bit of time and just thought to develop it and to turn it into something else.
I neglected putting it in the slide, but you speak about reiterations, and I love your Ukatoa with the Mighty Nine on the boat. That's a cool. If you guys haven't seen it, go on Instagram and follow this man and look at that, and it'll just like invoke the feeling of that punch up.
What was the question?
What are your favorite tools for creating detailed imagery with your maps? You know, like physical tools or just.
If you're talking about for like actual home game or whatever, we were talking about this before. I try and stall doing a build for as many sessions as I can, so I can make it meaningful, right? So I try and play theater of the mind for as much as until I kind of steer to a thing that makes sense of like, okay, this is a good excuse to do something. Because as soon as I build out a whole thing, the whole game slows down. Right? The story slows down a whole bunch. So it's like trying to cover a lot of ground so that then you can get to a meaningful point where then when you do put a thing on the table, it's gonna be like, okay, this is sort of a climax of this arc, let's make this thing count, and you've done enough, you've invested emotionally in the story to the point where this becomes a meaningful inflection point. And then once I am, so it's like kind of see where the story's going to go, because it's a damn home game. It's so you never know where the hell it's going to go. It's a lot of kind of stalling and feeling it out, and kind of then working towards something that'll work for that. And then once I do a build, one of the first things I focus on is verticality, right? Of like, how can if we're going 3D, I want to go up to make it dynamic and make it interesting, and do something I can't do on graph paper. Like, if we're good doing, let's go up, because then it also looks cool when you're moving the cameras around and whatever. So that's in terms of actual builds. That's my like go to. Just go up, and then put something like, have a reason to go to. Like, sure, you can make this like really awesome whatever, but if there's no reason for the players to go there, they're gonna stay in the corner of the map and like do nothing. You built this whole thing out. So then give some reasons to go to places out there. Like, put some MacGuffins out, or put something interesting, or something shiny, or something lit up, or whatever. I don't even need to know what it is. I just need to have something there that might catch their eye, so that then they want to go wander around the map. Because then once you're engaged in wandering, then it opens up the world of improv, and who knows what's gonna happen.
I'll add to that. Definitely if you're about to start combat and you're a 3D terrain person, like, end right at the beginning of combat as a cliffhanger, and that gives you like a week to at least build your map. That's if you guys take anything away from this session, it's that if you're gonna build a 3D map, like, start the next session with that battle. And come in
make
with
sure
that
they're
map.
committed to the damn thing, because otherwise they go chase the squirrels and don't go to it. You're like,
You build a coliseum and they teleport to another plane at the beginning of the session because they weren't feeling that.
We haven't used that yet, by the way. We haven't used that yet.
What were your tools or approaches?
For me, I mean, so my brother's our DM, and he's off to med school now. So our new DM, we're kind of without one. Anybody want to do that? Let me know. And but I'm in the process of making a Mordheim build, so we're gonna switch over and do some Mordheim work. It's a really cool series on my YouTube channel. It's coming out. So for me, really, I don't do a lot of
Where
this.
can people find this YouTube channel?
Tabletop Witchcraft. Check it out. So, but yeah, I don't really set the tables up, so I don't have to worry about what you guys do. Usually it's the bathroom break, and we're all upstairs. My brother's setting everything up. But for me, creation, foam has always been my medium that I love to work with. You can see this picture right here. That whole mausoleum was made out of foam. Actually, Gerard Boom of Shifting Lands flew in from the Netherlands and spent a week with me. And between cigars, he was building that. So yeah, I love the cigars.
How many cigars?
Yeah, this is a
You
shot.
went through a lot. But yeah, just kind of working on stuff with foam is really what I like to do. But
EVA foam?
XPS foam. Yep. I just went through quite a bit of EPS foam for the Mordheim build. It's going to be really fun. I'm super excited. But we'll touch on, I think, that kind of stuff.
Foam is a super powerful resource as a terrain creator as well. It's I mean, you could, between the XPS foam, like the Pink Panther foam that you can get at Home Depot, like in 2x2 squares, and then the Crayola, like moldable foam, that's also super helpful.
But you can,
and the nice thing about it is that it's like super light, and acrylic materials are wonderful.
It's cheap, it's light.
Well, that's the thing, you can get it free, right? You can get it in packaging. I always save all that up when I can. You can even go to construction sites and get that stuff for free too, because they're always throwing out big slabs of it, something to keep in mind. Huge chunks. Yeah.
One of the players on my actual play, he exclusively builds like mini houses from garbage. And he told me about this one time. He like broke onto a construction site to steal. And I don't condone this, guys. Private that. But like there was a nice like 4x8 panel of like pink XPS foam that was
Ask permission.
not to incriminate, it wasn't. Yeah.
Freedom, where can people find this actual play of yours?
It's on top.
Somebody's got to be your
You were gonna say something?
No, I wasn't.
Well, then I'll just hop into this next question. You know, how has y'all's approach evolved over time? You know, when you're like building something, what's the difference between approaching it now and in terms of comparison when you first started?
I would say it kind of dovetails with Nate's point that I used to just be like, I have this terrain, I have to have a build every single game. But you don't want to do 4-hour-long combat every single session. So I think finding that pacing finding that emotional buy-in, finding it so that your work as a DM is actually impactful and actually has a meaning to the players. I think that finding that balance, I think, is the way to go. And in the beginning, like I said, you're just doing it every time, and you kind of get tired of doing that work. So I think it's one where to balance the burnout and to balance the impact for your players' experience, I think you just have to find that right pacing for how often you do it and how big you go.
Yeah, that's super valid.
DM burnout's a thing.
DM burnout is a fun thing. Is a thing. Sorry, from New York, guys. New York. You guys, approach evolving.
So I guess I'll take this from the standpoint of developing terrain at Dwarven Forge. So we're developing tools for other people to use. So rather than I'm just making a one-off for my home games, generally creating stuff to provide other people with tools to tell their stories. So one of the sort of early on it was let's just make that the coolest thing in the world, but it ended up generally being overly specific. And you want to, the challenge is just about everybody wants to tell their own story, right? You've got your own thing is probably different than what somebody else is telling. So it sort of quickly evolved into sort of how do you make something that's general enough that a lot of people can use it as a storytelling jumpstarter, cool enough to be interesting, but general enough to be broad. So it's like trying to find specific but general and cool but also reusable, like trying to find that sweet spot has been the sort of the big driver rather than just make this really specific cool one. Because also with the rise of 3D printing, that's a perfect vehicle. If you want this really weirdly specific one-off, like that's the thing you should probably 3D print out. Like we'll give you stuff to cover most of your table and then make that really weird specific thing for your game, print that out.
Yeah, that's kind of like what I do a lot of. I like just print random weird things.
Just weird specific you need once,
yeah,
and like you don't need that in Dwarven, right? That's
like I said before, I'll end session at the crux of combat, and then that'll give me a week to like 3D print everything and paint it and type everything. So, I mean, it makes sense, and if people like it on the internet and give me money for it, that's awesome. But that's neither here nor there. 3D printing is super awesome.
Amazing tool.
I think, starting small is really big too, right? Because
Just start.
a lot of times people try and take off a little bit more than they can handle, and they get frustrated. I used to do that when I was younger. I'd see a piece of art that I liked, and I'd go home and try and recreate it. It might be really late at night, and then all of a sudden, it doesn't look good. It doesn't look like garbage. I didn't like it. And I wouldn't give up, but I'd set it aside. And those types of failures are really good to learn from those. Kind of keep them, off to the side, go back, maybe revisit that build down the road. But in year one of my YouTube channel, I was showing people how to make little treasure chests, right? Little hatch or little lever. And here I am at year 5, and we're doing airships. And
that's fun, guys.
Woo! Yeah, it's really fun. And again, starting small. So if you look at the back of the airship, the piece that's painted, and the reason the helm is painted all up is because that's actually a stable. I built that stable about a year and a half before I built the airship, and I said, you know what, I want to reuse that because, let's face it, that didn't take a week to build. That took me about a month and a half or so. So being able to take a build that I already had, put it on a shelf, and sit back and look at it and say, well, how can I turn this into something else usable? Slap that right on the back of the airship, and now we got an extra piece of terrain that I can use. So,
captain's quarters.
Yeah, just adding lots of stuff. You can see the airborne container right there, the little side thruster on the airship, painted in gray. But yeah, just
starting small and starting one step at a time, just in general, right? Be it prepping a game, making terrain, whatever it is. Just do a couple. It doesn't be perfect, doesn't be everything. Just start with a couple of things. Just start.
I actually started with
that's when it starts. Just to start.
With that, I started my 3D terrain experience with Dungeon Craft 1985 games. Shout out to them, they're awesome. If you want a super accessible, affordable approach to terrain where you can get a little bit more an immersive feel, it's just dry erase images that you just cut out of cardboard, and that's where I got started. And then I got the itch, and my wallet became empty.
Yeah, and I would say too, when it comes to starting the collection, I think starting small and gaining total comprehension of what you have, because I feel like you can do a lot with pieces if you are forced to creatively think about, all right, well, how do I use this thing? Because if you have a huge collection, it can be overwhelming just in terms of how many tools you have in the toolbox. And I think if you start small, slowly grow, I think you'll have a deeper comprehension of how those pieces work together, and you'll get more out of the collection itself.
Plus, limitations breed creativity.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think you need to actually master a piece or
Right.
a tool before you move on, but to get a really good understanding of it,
Yep.
makes life a lot easier.
Yeah.
I'm looking for the door stuff that I put on here. My next question for you, I think, which kind of ties into that, what are some of the challenges that you've dealt with when it comes to like building maps, and like how have you circumvented them? You know, I know a lot of times, me personally as a DM, I'm like, I have a vision in mind, and I need to get this done. What are some of the things that you do to be able to accomplish the things that you have?
Stall.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't like to call my players challenges, but they're challenge adjacent. But no, I would say the thing is just, with me, because I do a lot of large Gorgon forge builds and things like that, transportation, keeping it from breaking, because I go to my player's house, I'm transporting builds and things like that. And just trying to stay like creatively motivated to want to keep doing it, to kind of like keeping the well from running dry, you know. You kind of have to, for me, it's like going on, like walking through nature, and just kind of like recharging the creative batteries a little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
That makes sense.
That's valid.
It can definitely get overwhelming trying to create something, you know, and especially when you have a vision in mind and trying to, you know, see it come to life. I think, you know, taking it a little bit slow, you know, just chipping away at it. I find that writing things down is really good. So, you know, making a list of, like, I gotta, you know, I want to cut this piece of foam for this part of the build and work on it and kind of try and wrap that piece up before we move on to the next set is really good. Checking things off, small wins. I talk about that a lot. You know, something you can cross off on your list and you feel like you've accomplished something, and it kind of motivates you to keep moving on, especially when you've got a really long or kind of like an arduous build ahead of you.
And avoid comparison. That's a
Yes.
piece of joy. You know, someone who's been collecting for 15 years, I don't think it's realistic to expect to walk in and just, you know, blow that out of the water. You know, I think it's one thing that comes with time, and if you're patient, you'll eventually get there, kind of thing.
Perfectionism is one of the things that's always a challenge, and remembering that your players don't care. Like, you know, like you can agonize over this one little corner in this thing, where, but at the end of the day, they don't care, right? They're invested in the story, they're invested in hanging out doing the thing, they're invested in the fact that you have to build it all or anything. They're like, you don't need to get hung up on, like, I would get hung up on trying to make
Tell me my skeleton hand doesn't matter that I put my build?
Well, it does, right? But if you didn't have time for that skeleton hand, it wouldn't matter. Right? Like for them sitting down at the table, it wouldn't matter. Like to you would know, like, oh, this skeleton's missing, but the players don't know. Like they don't know that this thing was off by half an inch or whatever. Like they don't really see the flaws that you're gonna see. So like just having a thing is better, like, than not having the thing. And then the other challenge that I've been facing recently is they're 19th level in the home game, so they can cover so much ground that it's trying to do, like, feeling I have to always make really big builds so that there's interesting things to go, but not wanting to make a big build every time. Like how do you juggle that? And realizing you can just, if you throw down a battle mat and throw a couple of things of interest and there's less space in between, that works wonderfully well. Like you don't have to, every millimeter doesn't have to be dripping in detail and things or whatever. Like it can just be whatever the story is going to need to be exciting, whatever's going to need to like get the players.
It's almost like that thing, I don't know if anyone has played in a band or something, when you're performing, no one notices the little details that you like slip up on, so it's okay to be kind to yourself and understand that everyone's enjoying themselves at the end of the day.
That's true.
So I actually have a specific question for you. So you specialize, NPC creations, NPC Charles, you specialize in terrain photography. What are like the main differences between when you build for photography versus when you build for games?
Yeah, so I would say when it comes to photography, it's convenient because, like, for that right there, I only have to worry about this small square of details. I have to build a very detailed world in this very small area. So you kind of get away with adding a lot more detail, making it a little bit more cramped. When I play with my players, it's a much more open map because it needs to be, from a practical standpoint, to play like 5e on, if that makes sense. But yeah, it's nice because when you're doing a picture, you're only worrying about the small window. You can really focus in and really get detailed. But then with players, it has to be relevant. You know, you can't just put things in that look good, because from this visual storytelling perspective, I can do things that just have appeal visually. Whereas with the players, it actually has to have meaning and tie-in with the things that they've been experiencing. So it's one where, yeah, it's just, they're spoiled, but they're not this spoiled.
Also, it needs to be playable if you're doing it for the game, right? Your photo doesn't need to be playable; it just needs to look like it.
Yeah, it needs to look good.
Yeah, exactly. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean, I think that's very valid, because, you know, photography is like that brief moment. You know, you're snapping that image, so you could like place things that aren't finished behind other things. You can do a lot.
And I will say this too, is that if you do get into like the diorama building and things like that, make it practical as you can, so that you can get some use out of it on your table when you play. What I started switching to was when I did something for a diorama, you know, photo shoot, I would make sure I was using that in my actual game. So it limits burnout. It actually makes it, you know, relevant, and it just makes it so you're not doing more work than you need to, kind of thing.
Oh, yeah, good. My next question is actually for you, John. We talked about, you know, the materials that you like to use and techniques for creating terrain. How do you balance like creativity with practicality when you're making stuff? Because I know you make some really like ambitious, you know, villains that like have all this intricate detail. And what I'm most curious about, I think, is how you make it playable at the table.
Yeah, so
It's the DM's problem.
yeah, it's the DM's problem. We went over that. No, it's hard because I get a vision in my head and I can't get it out. I gotta like get it out in reality, and I want to see it come to life. And it doesn't matter, you know, what I gotta do to get it to finished product. So, for example, I have never played Mordheim in my life, and I've got a 3.5 foot table built in my studio right now. And we were talking about where are we gonna put this thing. And I don't know. I really don't. But
I hope you like the game.
yeah, you're right. So it's just, I don't really balance the practicality of it. But as far as using it in game, again, I leave that up to my brother. Right? There are things, I like to make things playable and exciting and multi-layered. So the airship actually comes apart. You can play down below in the deck. The Coliseum that you showed earlier has the sands down below, and you can actually take them out, and there's the jail cell down below, the torches burning.
That's cool.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah, because an issue that I run into when I like make 3D, when I'm making 3D terrain from scratch that isn't like, you know, 3D printed, I have to figure out a way to make it like work together, so that way I can put like a little mini in case my players decide to go into a place that I might not have built. And that's a thing. Yeah. So what do you, this is a technical question. You do such a great job of just weathering your pieces, and I'm like curious about your process a little bit. Now, I am beholden to the almighty technique that is dry brushing, but I want to know if like what you do beyond that to like add the depth that you do.
So, you know, I do some research, right? Depends on what you're making. If we're working on rock, I have this infatuation with stone. I want to like, I'm always striving to like recreate it and weather something and try a new technique. I don't like to stick with the same thing, but I try to grow and all that. But it's just a matter of,
Weathering. How do you weather?
Yeah, so one of the big things that I always talk about on my channel, a lot of people ask me, it's layers. That's my biggest thing, layer upon layer upon layer. You'll find somebody that's new to making something with stone, and they might do a base coat of black, dry brush gray, maybe throw a wash on it and call it good. But you can then go back, do a light dry brush, you can add some yellow or blue to that stonework, and dry brush again.
I like brown. I do brown,
Yeah.
and then the
Then
gray
you
over
can
that.
take pigment powders and add pigment powder to it, add little bits of clocking from moss, and then you can even take, you know, like grass tufts and add those into spots. So just lots of layers. You want to make it interesting to look at, and I think that's really the key. When I'm working on something, I'll always step back. When I think I'm done, I put it on the table, and I'll literally step back like 10 feet and stare at it and walk around it.
Scratch your beard.
It needs something right there, you know?
Well, and that's remembering it's going to be seen at the table too. Like a lot of times when you're working on things, you get like you're obsessed down in here, but it's like people are going to see it from over there at the table. You got to make sure it reads from a distance.
Yeah.
So stand back and look at it.
Moving to you, I have a question. You work for such a prolific terrain company, Dwarven Forge, the legendary. I'm sure everyone has seen Dwarven Forge terrain. Raise your hand if you haven't. Exactly.
The Dwarven
It's amazing. How has Dwarven Forge's, or I guess your approach to terrain evolved over the years? And then, like, what I'm curious about is how you incorporate, you know, community feedback into your designs and whatnot.
That's a good question. So, in the olden days, it was just like Stefan would kind of sketch out a random thing and then try and make it. And it evolved into, I came from a film background, so I'm very into collaborative workflows. So, developed a development team, so everything is is very team-based. So rather than just coming from, because what you can create as a team is always better than what you can create as an individual. So it's similar to D&D, right? You kind of have an idea where you're going to go, and then the players are all putting the stuff in, and it goes somewhere that you weren't expecting. It's probably more exciting and more interesting than what you'd initially planned. So we're very, very collaborative based, and try and get as many different eyes on a thing as possible. So it's why just have kind of each department look at it along the way and see if there's anything that they can input that or they thought about as maybe that a specialist wasn't thinking about. The paint team will think of something different than the sculpt team, whatnot.
Yeah.
So mostly it's just about, rather than trying to just have one person make a thing, it's about having a collective make a thing, which generally makes what we found is made better results.
I'm actually trying to pull up some of the images that you sent me, because you sent me like some really cool stuff.
And then the second one is community. So one of our one of the neat things about being a company that's been around so long is we have a pretty strong and a very passionate base of collectors. Our community is unbelievable. We have a bunch of folks here. So we're really lucky that we've had forums forever now, Discord, and we've done a bunch of crowdfunding, 13 crowdfunding campaigns or something. So we just have tons and tons of feedback coming in, which is staggeringly valuable, because these are the people who want your stuff. So they say, hey, we want this thing. It really helps us make it. So generally what we do when we get feedback coming in is you say, well, does it resonate, right? Because sometimes people, like, there's a lot of things where you want it to be purple and you want it to be red, and it's going to stay purple because purple is the best color. But you know, if there's something that's it resonates, oh yeah, we really missed the mark on that, or this thing would be better, whatever. Then the next question is, well, is this something we can actually do? Like, you know, is that a change we can make? Does it make it better? So sometimes we'll do that, but mostly it's just seeing, does it resonate? Like, is that a thing? It's like, oh yeah, that feels like you're right. They hit a thing that's like, yes, this would be better if we could do that. Or if everybody is like, we really want this thing, you're like, okay, let's try and make the thing.
And I'll say, as somebody who's like in that Discord sort of like community and everything, I've seen you guys during a Kickstarter, a good idea comes through the pipeline during a stream, and they will literally pivot,
jam it out,
and will literally make that change. So it's like they literally are live taking feedback from the community.
We're all gamers. We're all D&D players. This is just what happens in D&D. Like, you pivot, like you have the plan, and they're like, all right, plan A didn't work. Somebody throws out plan B, and the whole group that pivots. Of course, there's always that one character that doesn't pivot. It's like the thing, but like, sort of everybody's rapid fire problem solvers, and you want to kind of follow what's going to be more exciting or what's going to.
There's no doubt that a collaborative project is always one of the best projects, you know, and you turn your audience into part of that collaboration, which is great.
Well, it's the best. Yeah. Like, yeah. Hey, look at that.
My apologies, guys. This is the place where the magic happens, I'm assuming, right?
That's my home workshop.
That's your home workshop?
Yeah. Well, I needed a home workshop, and I needed a studio workshop. Because like, yeah, sometimes you want to work at home, sometimes you don't want to work with a group.
Fair. All right. So I think we have about like 20 minutes left in this panel. I think I'm pretty much have questions for you guys. I would love to open up the floor to all of you and just really like dive into the questions that you guys have because, you know, I'm curious. What are your questions? We have microphones over there. If y'all want to like line up and ask questions on those, feel free. We'll probably go right, left, right.
Yeah.
My right.
Camera.
It helps me.
I think it's facing. Yeah, it was. I can't remember. Camera right is where it's from the camera.
So my right, we're gonna start with you. Yes.
Hi.
Oh hey.
I wanted to ask for more information about working with foam as far as tools and techniques, and especially paint. Am I correct in thinking that some kind of paints don't get along with foam and can like corrode through it?
Yeah, I mean, if you were working with like aerosol cans, that can definitely be a problem. I've ruined the projects too, getting a little too ambitious and hitting it up, but there's ways of coating the foam a little bit. But a lot of your friend is kind of keeping away from it, letting the paint kind of mist over it, and not letting it build up, because whatever's in that aerosol can, it loves to eat the foam.
I'll tell you too. And when you're dealing with these kinds of products, please be careful. You know, I've made the mistake of like doing too many things in an enclosed area and had a rough evening as a result.
Yeah.
So like when you're using these materials, wear a respirator, gloves, like safety glasses. Don't be a statistic. That's the PSA for the day.
Seriously, safety glass.
No, but like the right type of equipment too. For
Yes,
example, like
yes.
you work with resin, you don't want to be using latex gloves. Right?
Yep,
Use
and
nice round gloves.
You'll be very uncomfortable to say the least. Anything else? Awesome. Thank you for your question. This side.
Hello.
Hello.
You guys have mentioned it briefly in the talk, but I wanted to ask if you had any more specific advice about tackling verticality in building if you want your players to be able to interact and play with like vertical space.
Stack anything, right? No, like just start building up. Like there's no rules other than go up further than you think you should, right? Because it looks cooler, right? The higher you get up, the cooler it looks on the table, and just keep going.
That also helps with like high level encounters, you know? Like a lot of times you don't have to build big this way if you're dealing with high level people. You build this way and it'll force them to use their resources to like fly up or like get someplace.
And the other easy cheat is if there's a way to lift a large section of your table, like a big chunk of XPS foam or something, like you can have dead layers underneath the thing, like just lift a bunch of stuff quickly can then get you some more difference between like if you've got a table, like let some of the table be table level so it lets everything else get high.
Yeah, I would say that if you check out the build I actually have here, if you look at the side of it, you'll see there's a lot of like cheap space that's been risen.
Yeah.
So it's not actual material or anything that was very expensive to do. It's spaced out, just flat pieces so that you can get a lot of lift with very little material. So just cost-effective way of doing that.
That's a good question.
And if you're going to be working and making the stuff yourself, magnets to your friend,
Yes.
you get somebody that stands up from the table and bumps it and everything falls over, that's a long bathroom break. So do that. Little plug here. Check out my Cavern series on YouTube.
Where can they find it?
I follow you.
All right. I don't know if you've seen that series or not, but yeah, that's a really good one for you. So.
The poor person's magnets are white stick, also poster putty. We use that all the time. Just stick together so it doesn't fall when someone bumps the table.
Yeah, museum tack, right?
Yeah,
That-
any museum wax,
It's
any
insane.
little sticky something.
And then also make that verticality matter, I would say, because
Make
if
them go.
you have a monk that can move around the board 5 times before their turn's over, then have something up there that is strategically advantaged, just something, some reason for that verticality to be there. Yeah.
And you could like put little elements that add to the difficulty. Like I use like preserved moss to make like a bramble that they take piercing damage to climb. Like you can literally take any little element that you put on the table and have it have an actual literal mechanical effect in terms of gameplay. Thank you. We're going to this side. Hello, Fred.
Hi, hello. We're supposed to stack the panel. There are a million questions I want to ask, but I think the most important one made grassy plateaus, I've made a tower, I've made a boat, I've made woods. What are, maybe beyond doing hyper-specific, my players have entered this place, so I'm gonna build this place. What are other generic, easy baseline, if I'm doing a battle at X location, I can just throw down some terrain that's good? What's the next project between big battles that I should be
Do
working on?
bridges?
Bridges?
Bridges are always fun. Because there's danger, there's a bottleneck.
The
you can't go wrong
bottleneck,
with
the
a
classic
bridge.
bottleneck, makes it a slog.
And it could be elevation because it's a bridge.
Yeah, and I would say if you're not building for the game you're in the next couple of games, think about like what's the next campaign I'm gonna run? What would be good to have if we decide to run Ravenloft or whatever, you know, that you're thinking of, you know, running in the future. So just planning that out.
Your random encounters could also never be random. You know, you could just have them build that you just have in your workshop, and then you're like, oh, I rolled this sick random encounter. Deal with it, guys.
I mean, lots of small pieces of terrain are great too. You can go down to rocks and boulders, trees, stuff like that. That can be used, you know, for a lot of different things. You know, you make enough boulders. I think I need probably 50 of them. You can make a mountain wall out of that. You know what I mean?
It's in a cave, it's by your castle, it's everywhere, rocks are everywhere.
Yeah, maybe things that aren't, you know, actual like land terrain. Maybe it's a centerpiece that you can use in future builds and things like that. So just something that you can get use of in the future, but maybe not for this exact one encounter. That makes sense.
Ooh, that's a good sentence. Any sort of like pedestal, dais, plinth, like a large thing that raises other things up, then can take something else you have, now has like more import because you put it on a big raised thing. Now it's like, ooh, it's like the special,
It emphasizes.
whatever. Like anything you put on there now looks more exciting and cool in the center of.
Emphasis.
A little synergy between the old pieces and the new. Kind of.
Awesome, thank you all so much for your time.
Absolutely, thank you. My friend, what is your question?
Good afternoon, gentlemen. I just want to thank you so much for all of your insight today. It was a pleasant experience to hear from you all. I'm in a bit of a unique situation. I am with a group now that is going to be wanting to stay in one location for a very long time, and I'm not really sure. Would it be better in this instance to continuously make little adjustments to this area because their involvement, or is it better to do like big changes and only emphasize making those changes when things are happening?
Depends on the story.
It depends on what those changes are. I think it depends the impact that it's going to have. Is this going to be a lasting effect here? Then yeah, maybe make that change.
The other one is what's your time frame, right? Like if you only have a little time, it's a little change that they did. If you got a bunch of time, make the big, you know, the meteor hits and now there's a big crater, whatever.
You know, yeah, if you know you're gonna not really railroad them in a certain direction, you know, maybe you kind of do theater of the mind for the area that you're in, and you prepare ahead and start building now for the next big thing that's gonna happen.
The other real good guide is what are you excited about? Just make the thing you're most excited about because then it'd be cooler. And you know, don't make the things you're not excited about.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really easy to find energy to make things when you care about it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is just a bunch of 3D terrain artists convincing you to play Theater of the Mind exclusively.
Yeah.
My friend over here, what is your question?
I have two specific ones. One, as a terrain maker, we work with a lot of paints. And so we have to be economical with said paint. What are your top 3 brands that you use for large-scale terrain pieces, or maybe lots of little pieces that you're going to be putting out? The other one is, how much of a game changer is a hot wire cutter?
No. Oh boy. You want me to answer that one?
Yeah.
My channel I don't think would exist without one. I gotta have it. Honestly, that and the foot pedal for the Proxon, they don't sponsor me. Total game changer. I'd love to have that. As far as paint goes, I think speak for maybe everybody up here, but Apple Barrel, Folk Art, real, you know, general paints. Cheap is better. You know, if you're gonna
Cheap
get
is
to it-
better. The only time you're gonna use like the nice paints is for like a character mini.
Yeah.
Like if you're gonna make terrain, you're gonna use a lot of paint. So just
yeah.
go get like the cheapest paint you can. Like
Yeah.
like
I use
Michael's
our
dollar
corny.
models.
We make our own paint line that's really affordable, like 8-ounce bottles for $7 or something. I use that because also I get it for free, but you know.
Yeah, I just to break with tradition here, I use like miniature painter paints and turbo dork, you know, things like that.
I love turbos.
Yeah, just open to anything really.
Miniature painters good.
Yeah.
I'm actually like, I'm a classic. If I'm gonna buy nice paints, I go army painter because that's what my grandfather raised me on.
Well, yeah, thank you so much.
Absolutely, thank you. This side.
Hi. Sorry. Getting adjusted into the mic.
No,
I-
loud is good.
No, I know nothing about terrain construction. I've never built any of my own stuff. I'd be curious to hear a little bit more about, one, some of the other materials you use. You mentioned foam and a couple different kinds of foam. What are some other things that you use for building? And then two, what are some of the tools that you use? Like are you just like freehand cutting this stuff with a knife? She mentioned like a hot wire cutter. Like I don't know anything that's involved. So like what would be some of your top essential materials and top tools that you would use? And where do you get this stuff? Is it all just stuff you get at a hardware store, or do you have to get it from specialty stores? So, for someone who knows nothing about it, what would be, you know, some things to look up or some things to research?
Wire cutter is God. Hot wire cutter is God.
Yeah, I mean,
And the exacto blade.
I think a framing square is really good. A little 12-inch framing square. I use that all the time. A good hot glue gun, and then maybe some tacky glue or PVA glue. Right, you start there, and you can do a lot with that. You can cut cardboard, you can cut foam. That's really where you want to start. Start basic, start small, find something really tiny that you want to work with. You can do a lot with that, you'd be surprised. The hot wire cutter is really important when it comes to making detailed cuts, things that are round. If you got certain jigs that you want to make bricks or pillars out of, and it becomes a game changer when you start doing that because you add a lot of detail quickly.
Yeah, it's a huge game changer too, beyond just like cutting foam. If you're trying to like kit bash plastic pieces together, you get like my personal hot wire cutter has like the removable attachment, right? I can replace them, so if I want to like, you know, smush something together that I want to make something really mess up, I'll use the hot glue gun beyond just crazy glue, because sometimes crazy glue doesn't always stick. And heat fixing is a really powerful method in adhering things together.
Tabletop drill press and a scroll saw also are tools that I use all the time. You can do a lot of really intricate cuts with a scroll saw. Just being able to have 90 degrees on a little tabletop drill press is awesome for holes.
Do you recommend any brands for that?
It's whatever you find cheap on that. Like it's not for, you know, we're making like hobby terrain.
Right, industrial.
The other cat litter and gravel also is like something I use all the time.
Big time.
Yeah, I was gonna say your recycling bin is gonna be your best friend. If let's say you get like a takeout container that looks kind of funky, use it. I have a friend who got like the bottom of the grape tomatoes, right? That has like the plastic on top. It's like kind of like a dome. He flipped the bottom and then he poured like some, forgive my pronunciation of this, epoxy, into like the center part of it and made like a blood pool, like a ritual blood pool. You know, you can do anything with anything, really. It's just the bounce of your creativity is what determines what you make.
You get into the hobby, you're gonna start saving a lot of things. Pringles cans, talking about plastic from toy containers, use those for glass, for windows. You know, you'll find use for a lot of different things.
It will change how you look at things walking down the grocery aisle.
Oh, everything. Also honing steel, sharp, keep your blades sharp. There's nothing more dangerous.
A sharp knife is a
dull
safe
tools
knife.
will kill you.
A sharp knife is
Keep
a safe
everything
knife.
sharp.
Thank you for your question. Awesome.
Hi, taking it back to height and layers. One of my biggest problems is alignment of my layers and actually getting things, you know, I've got shingles going down one side, I have it go over the edge, but then things still aren't coming together or looking this way. Do you have any advice for
That's called character. You did that on purpose.
Yeah,
To see, yeah.
feature, it's on a bar.
Absolutely. I was wondering, do you have any advice about trying to have good ways to like quickly get those layers so that way they can kind of sit on top of each other and I don't have to worry too much about it.
So you're talking about in terms of like structural integrity of like the build?
Like stacking on top of each other, so the top one matches up with the bottom one.
I personally have a large box of just like shims. So basically things that I can put in at different heights so that I can raise up and lower things as I need to, so that I can get those micro adjustments on things. Because when you're planning it out excuse me, ahead of time, it's really hard to understand how that's all gonna play together once you get to the end. Whereas if you have a couple shims you can quickly throw in, you can make those, those adjustments at the entire X scale.
I actually use, in my home games, I use like the WizKids stuff, the Warlock stuff, because it's like super quick and it was accessible to me. I've just collected it over time. This map has a decent amount of it. I don't have it here, but what I'll do if I want to like go vertical is like, if I am worried about a layer, I'll just like cut like a pane of cardboard that fits the profile of the bottom of that layer, and then that like adds the support, and then it allows me to build like outward and upward. It's like
Drill press and magnets.
Mhm.
Drill press in, bottom magnets, then everything stays.
Oh,
lines up.
also, I'm pretty sure y'all know him, Todd Putnam. I think he has a free STL for like cavern or like blocks and riser things. If you want to print those, if you don't want to like it, you can find him. Todd Putnam, he's the man. He's a
awesome.
terrain legend.
He's good. And I would say I spend a lot of time when I'm gonna do an intricate height build with just the theory of how it all is going to work together before I really get into laying it out and like getting the details all set. So just a lot of messing around at first to be like, all right, is this gonna work? So that time spent ahead of time can save you sometimes down the road.
Thank you very much.
So we have time for probably like one or two more questions. Thank you so much.
Lightning round.
By the way. So let's go to this side. I want to hear your questions, sir.
So my question is, when you reveal the terrain to your players, do you like hide some of it, like with a cloth or with like black pieces of cardboard to reveal each section at a time? Do you build additional sections that are covered by the sheet, just a box, nothing there, just giving something to whatever's there?
I'm sorry. I personally have like just like very cheap like dressings for like a dinner setting, and like just like napkins and things. And it's very light, so you can like set it over. You can change the shape of it. It's very economically easy to purchase, and just a very easy way to get customized covers. Because a lot of this geometry is going to be different every single time you play, and I just use like black, cloth napkins basically to cover up a lot of that area. That's usually how I approach that.
And the fog of war is the thing.
It's a real. I use a couple of different techniques depending on what the build, what the situation, whatever. Sometimes I'll cover the whole table with a cloth, which drives people crazy because they want to know what's under the cloth, what's under the cloth. Sometimes I'll cover different areas with small pieces of cloth, and as they reveal them, I will pre-build on, like we make metal terrain trays that with magnets so you can slide stuff on, like as they discover it, fly it in. Sometimes I'll have multiple builds that'll fly stuff off and fly stuff in. Depends on what you're building, how you think they might explore it, and what your table setup is. But generally, it doesn't matter how you do it. It's more satisfying when there is a reveal, right? Like when they, it doesn't matter if it's just a trash bag or whatever. But like when you lift the thing off and then they get to see the thing, there's that moment. Or you go to your bathroom break and you come back and suddenly there's this scene out there. Like it really is worth it's worth spending a couple minutes to figure out how do we do some sort of reveal, because it's just fun.
Side note, if you want a really good reveal, ottoman trays, man, just load a map onto that and just slam it down.
Yeah.
If something knocks over, it's okay. It's the impact of that reveal that matters most. It's like hanging up a phone. Anyway.
Good question.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I think we have enough time for this. We have about 2 minutes left. What's your question, sir?
Yeah, so some of the pictures that we've seen, like, there's a lot of like lighting elements. I'm sure like there's dioramas, that's external light. There's stuff you can do with paint. But are you ever playing with electricity and wiring and things? And what are some like tips and tricks around that? What are you soldering? What are you using? If you're like gonna put lighting stuff inside the.
I'm gonna like leave it up to these two guys about this. Their lighting situations are crazy.
Yeah, I mean, real quick, so lighting, I got lots of lights in my stuff, all the way from just like taking one CR2032 battery and sticking in a piece of foam and a LED lights up on the other side of it, all the way to some really intricate lighting. I'll plug somebody else that's not even here. If you go to Terraintronics on YouTube, hit him up. He's amazing. He's my electrician. He does all my stuff for me and helps me out. So Yeah, check him out.
There's a ton of, you can go on anywhere and get L-wire or little LED pods. There's a bunch of like already existing stuff that you can very easily like either take the casing off or just use the casing as it is and like hide in your builds. There's a lot of micro LED, I use LumiCubes, which are more expensive than they need to be, but there's like a variety of just small micro lighting that you can pop into stuff. And we make a lot of stuff that has built-in lighting because it is, do lighting in your stuff. Like it gets everybody really excited.
Yeah,
It
really
sets a
does.
mood. It
You
like,
can
really
also
is really-
put tea candles, like the
Yeah,
Halloween
tea
tea
lights,
candles. You just
tear
like
those
crack them
apart,
open
pop
and
in.
just glue the lighting into where you need it.
And I think once you start working with it too, you'll realize how simple it really is to do. Because I feel like when you hear electricity, there's just some idea of like, oh, that's probably a lot to learn. But I think once you get that just 2 wires and a power source and a light, it starts to be like, oh, I can really do a lot with this. You know, if that makes sense.
You can cannibalize so much stuff off, like after cheap existing LED stuff out there, you can tear it apart and just use it as is. It's like,
And when it comes to photography and things like that, if you want to set that mood and you want to get that ambiance in there, less is often more, because your camera, depending on what you're using and everything like that, it's going to drink up a lot of light. So it might look very dark to your eyes, but the camera is going to do its job and it's going to come out nice.
Thank you for your question. And everyone, thank you so much for coming out to this panel. Appreciate it. You could follow us all on our things. We have Tabletop Witchcraft YouTube. We have Miniature Nate on Instagram, and also you can follow all the Dwarven Forge. And then we have NPC Creations, and I'm Thunder Wizard Games at that name. And thank you all for coming. Have a wonderful time, everybody. Thank you all.